This is Red Eyes Radio. Welcome to Red Eyes Radio, my friends. This is Henrik Palmgren, your host and editor of the website red-ice.net. I'm coming to you from the west coast of Sweden, either through bbsradio.com or if you're listening to this program from the archives. But wherever or whenever you are, thank you for tuning in. And today we have a very special guest on the program. Richard Hamlin is with us, and he's actually calling us from Placerville County Jail in California. And what we are going to address today is a very disturbing issue or topic, and I have in the past on the website highlighted and posted similar stories and articles in regards to many of the things that we'll be addressing here today. And a few of you might remember that I've posted a few articles about Richard Hamlin. The last one was in the beginning of July, so if you have been following along, you will be familiar with some of the things that we'll be talking about. I will also make sure to have related articles linked from the info page about this program, so you will be able to follow along and also visit Richard's website and so forth. A while back I was contacted by Richard, or by Richard's attorney, I guess, and I thought that it would be a great idea to do a program about this and let Richard himself talk more in depth about this case and what has happened to him and his wife. And I can also mention that we talked over the phone last week, and I can say that my impression of Richard is that he's an extremely courageous man who has, for the love of his children, pursued this case where the evidence have led him, and he have kept an open mind along the way, and where many others would probably have turned away, Richard have allowed himself to explore much of the available research that is out there in order to understand and get to the bottom of this bizarre and awful world of mind-controlled child molestation and satanic ritual abuse that his wife was or maybe even is a victim of. And this is an important case and an extremely important issue to dare to address and face. And wherever it might lead, it needs to be sorted out, and the implications could be enormous if we find that this kind of thing is more commonly spread around the world than we first believed. It could be, in one way maybe, explain a lot of things, but it would also make this world a whole lot stranger and scarier. But we would definitely know that there are serious issues to deal with on this planet. And I will let Richard now talk more about this. So let's bring him on and say hello, Richard, and welcome to the program. Let me say it's great to have you here and that you could make time to be with us today. How are you holding up, my friend?
Well, I'm doing all right, and I just really appreciate you doing work like you're doing. I think it really helps get the word out. I was somebody that, when I first started all this, didn't really know anything about mind control or type of ritual child molestation that I've discovered, and resources like yours really help, and I appreciate it greatly that I'm able to give you a call and talk about this.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you very much. And as I said, it's great to have you here. And to start things off, why don't we begin at the beginning so everyone is able to follow along? There are quite many threads to sort out here. So, I mean, if you can basically outline for us what has happened to you and your wife, and why you now are in jail. And I also want to say that take as much as time as you feel is necessary. We got about 15 minutes or so here, so please go ahead, Richard.
All right, thank you. Well, how all this started was I was married to my wife, and her name's Susan Hamlin, and we had been married for a number of years. When I was arrested, we'd actually been married up to 20 years. And what happened was this. She basically showed some signs that something, was wrong from her childhood. Now, I was just a guy, and I didn't pick up on a lot of these things. But what I now know is that, these symptoms start to grow. She started becoming more depressed, a lot more very significant mood swings. It was almost like there was a toxin inside of her that needed to get out. picture perfect. You know, she was
Yeah.
almost robot-y that way. You know, everything was just fine. But things started breaking down emotionally for her. And, you know, you'd ask what it was, and she just wouldn't really be able to articulate it. One of the big red flags was that she had major blocks of memory gaps throughout her childhood. So in trying to talk to her was even more difficult because she had these huge gaps, I mean, whole periods of time that were just blank.
Hmm.
And as things went on, it finally got to a point where I really thought that I needed to kind of cut back what I was doing in terms of my profession. I was a criminal defense lawyer. Before that, I had been a prosecutor, and I had been very involved in my work. But what I saw was a woman that was in free fall as we were approaching the end of 2002.
Yeah.
And so I just really decided to kind of cut things back and really start paying attention to what was going on and try to explore some things. And she had been approached by another member in her family, her sister, and her sister had thought that they had been victims of being molested by her father.
Yeah.
And slow but surely, we started, you know, just working on facts that she knew. And what ended up happening was she started to reveal her history. It started off by her telling me about a girlfriend that was molested by her father. And she was really kind of stuck on that. And one night, as we were going through, you know, just going over some memories that she did have, she decided to look at a photo album. And she dug this out of a place I had never seen these pictures before. And she flipped through like 2-3 pages, and then she just froze. She saw a house that she had totally blanked out, never told me about, and she started to tell me where this was. And I was very surprised because, you know, I had known where she had lived, and she had never mentioned this.
Yeah.
And she just looked off into space, and I remember she said, "I've blanked this place out because bad things have happened there." And that is what really started an avalanche of memories that started coming out. And when you're dealing with somebody that has repressed these memories or has actually suffered from multiple personality disorder, they don't come out free-flowing. They come out in bits and pieces.
Yeah.
You have like 2 steps forward and 1 step back. You know, for 2 days she wants to let it all out, and then, you know, one day it's like another personality takes over, and she's extremely protective of the perpetrator.
Yeah.
Doesn't want to reveal it. And to sum up, what ended up coming out, and this was all through the year 2003, up to my arrest, which was February 28th of 2004, she revealed perhaps the most horrific childhood that I had ever heard of. She had been raped incessantly from 2.5 years old on throughout her life, even after we were married, by her father. When she was young, he was part of a larger group that molested children, and she was passed around to other adult family members, and to other associates of her father. Her father's name is Dr. Sidney Seymour. And what we had found about him was that he was part of a larger organization group that basically kind of swapped kids. And some of the things that they did to instill trauma was that they did some of this abuse during satanic ceremonies.
Yeah.
And for a year, she started to pour these things out, and she started writing diaries, and she started finally feeling courageous enough that she actually confronted her father about much of this. And the things that she wrote about are just mind-boggling. She wrote about being brainwashed and hypnotized and different forms of mind control, and the things that were done to her to keep her in line and to basically keep her silent are just stunning. And at the time, like I said, I had never heard of anything like this.
Yeah.
And through talking with people like Dr. Colin Ross, who's internationally renowned about multiple personality disorder and about severe trauma that happened in childhood, I've been able to put together the pieces of this puzzle. But up through 2003 and 2004, I was just trying to be a husband that was helping his wife.
Yeah.
We finally got to a point where she actually was going to go to the police, and that was something that obviously I thought had to be done.
Yeah.
And she did go to the police and gave a full statement. That is actually recorded. As a matter of fact, one of the case summaries is on my website, which is geocities.com/Richard W. Hamlin, and you can actually see the actual summaries that she gave. And they're horrifying, what she's claiming that took place. And the police hearing these things, I'm out in El Dorado County in California, a small, very well-to-do county, and they haven't heard of things like this, and their reaction was somewhat disbelieving. I mean, she was talking about a great number of people that were involved. The type of mechanisms that they were using to keep the silence was stunning.
Yeah.
Things that she saw included a murder of a young girl, and they, were just a little bit disbelieving immediately.
Yeah.
And I think she began to panic. And 2 days later, she recanted and said that I beat her to make these statements, and that's why I'm in jail. And Dr. Colin Ross has testified about this and has said that it's very, very common what she has done. And what complicated matters was that when I took her down to the police station, and she did have bruises on her, and she described for the police what had happened. An associate of Dr. Seamer's actually beat her up, and it was a last-ditch attempt to keep her from going to the police.
My God.
What has been revealed here would end up, sending him away for the rest of his life, along with some very, very powerful associates of his.
Yeah.
So in an overview, that's basically what happened, and she has held on to that recantation through this, and what we've tried to do is prove independently that these things have taken place, and I think we've been very, very successful in that regard.
Yeah, and the initial response from the people who can't, who might not understand this kind of, how this would work, or even doubt that this have been done before. I mean, in your case, have you been so far referencing back to historical events that obviously bring up this, like MkUltra and such?
Yes, and I'm glad you raised that, because I think to have a better understanding of this, that's where you got to start to look.
Yeah.
In our country, we've had some very corrupt things that have happened, and believe it or not, they've actually been made public, and yet at times I think it's so horrifying that the public wants to kind of sweep it under the carpet.
Yeah, exactly.
But one of the questions I had when I was going through this, I mean, if you can imagine this, I've been married to this woman for 20 years, very successful career, wife, also as a lawyer, we had 4 beautiful children, we had the house of our dreams, everything seemed idyllic, but this comes on, and I'm talking to friends about this, and their first reaction is, well, you got to leave her. I mean, obviously, if she's doing, incestuous acts with her father after you were married, I mean, she wanted to do this,
Yeah.
And I inherently knew that just wasn't the case. There was something more to this. I mean, this woman seemed to have very different personalities, and it seemed as though there was somebody struggling to try to almost get out.
Yeah.
And so I started researching and tried to, make some sense of this. And what I have found through our research is that there are lots of victims, like my wife, Susan Hamlin, and there's lots of perpetrators like Dr. Sidney Seamer.
Yeah.
And basically, what I have put together is that my ex-father-in-law, Dr. Seamer, was involved with MkUltra. He was in the U.S. Army during the Korean War, and basically, after he supposedly got out, he basically was told that he was wanted in continued intelligence work. He had been in military intelligence during his time in the Army, and basically he worked his way up and began being involved in this program. And the reason that we can say that, we've had some independent witnesses through our 2.5-year investigation that have come forward that have linked him with biological warfare work that he was doing.
My God.
And we've talked to several other witnesses.